The Guardian of Matching. A small shrine in the mountains. Once upon a time, at the foot of a distant mountain, there was a small village. On the outskirts of the village, nestled quietly among the trees, stood an old shrine. The villagers had passed down stories for generations that a guardian of matching resided in this shrine. It was said that if someone sincerely wished for it, the guardian would guide them to meet their perfect match. However, the guardian didn't just help people find their partners, he also gently gave them trials to ensure that they could open their hearts to each other, understand one another, and eventually accept one another. One day, a young man named Ryota, who lived in the village, visited this shrine. Ryota was a carpenter living alone, but deep inside, he often felt a lingering sense of loneliness. "Please, help me find my perfect match," he quietly prayed as he clasped his hands in front of the shrine. Hearing Ryota's prayer, the guardian of matching smiled gently, deciding, "I'll guide this young man to his perfect match." But the guardian knew well that simply meeting someone wasn't enough, trials would await them so that they could truly understand each other and accept their differences. Ryota's inner struggles. Ryota loved the smell of wood. Every day, the sound of him carving wood echoed from his small workshop on the edge of the village. Early in the morning, under the dim sky, Ryota would quietly start his work, tools in hand. He was skilled with his hands, and as the village carpenter, he was trusted by everyone. The furniture and buildings he made were sturdy, with a touch of gentle beauty in their design. However, despite his craftsmanship, Ryota felt an emptiness in his heart. Even though he worked hard and saw his projects completed, there was little that brought him true satisfaction. While he took pride in his work, the more time he spent alone, the more he found himself wishing he had someone to share those quiet moments with. Ryota had a few worries about himself. He was particularly concerned about his hair, which had started thinning at the back. Every morning, when he stood in front of the mirror to fix his hair, he would sigh, thinking, "If only I had a little more hair, I could feel more confident when meeting people." He felt ashamed of how much he cared about his appearance. It wasn't just that. Ryota often struggled with self-confidence. Even though he was confident in his skills as a carpenter, when it came to talking to others, he tended to make himself seem smaller. "Is it really okay for me to say something like this?" he would often think, and he found himself constantly checking others' reactions. Another of his worries was that he sometimes said things he later regretted. While chatting with friends or clients, he would blurt out whatever came to mind, only to realize afterward that it might have been unnecessary. Worried that he might have hurt someone without realizing it, Ryota often felt a vague sense of unease in his chest. Ryota also had a tendency to be overly cautious with money. He always thought, "I shouldn't waste money," but sometimes this caused people to call him stingy. Whether out with friends or buying something, Ryota found it hard to stop worrying about money, and his inability to fully enjoy himself frustrated him. Over time, Ryota realized that he was spending more and more time alone. While his work was fulfilling, the lack of someone to laugh with or share everyday moments with left him feeling a bit lonely. "Is this really okay?" Ryota sometimes asked himself. Though he was kind by nature, he began to feel that his worries and insecurities were keeping him at a distance from others. He wanted to open his heart and spend his life with someone, a feeling that grew stronger within him each day. One day, during a break from work, Ryota decided to visit the old shrine on the outskirts of the village. It was a place where people seeking love or connections had come to pray for generations. Ryota had visited the shrine once as a child, but this was his first time visiting as an adult. Standing before the shrine, Ryota quietly clasped his hands together. "Please, help me find someone who's a perfect match for me," he silently wished. In his heart, he hoped for the day when he could share his worries and insecurities with someone else. Hearing Ryota's prayer, the guardian of matching accepted his request. The guardian saw Ryota's kindness and sincerity but also understood his insecurities and the parts of his heart that were still closed. The guardian smiled softly and decided, "I'll find Ryota a perfect match." However, the guardian knew that Ryota would have to slowly break down the walls within his own heart. Thus, Ryota's journey of trials began. The guardian had prepared encounters that would help Ryota gradually change and lead him to his perfect match. Various encounters. After Ryota's prayer to the guardian of matching, some time passed. While he diligently continued his work, a part of him always carried a mix of anticipation and anxiety. Would his perfect match truly appear? And if they did, would he be able to build a relationship with them? One day, guided by the guardian, Ryota began to experience various encounters. However, none of these encounters went smoothly. For Ryota, they were trials and also important steps in confronting himself. One morning, while working in his workshop as usual, a merchant's daughter from the village came by. She was cheerful and outgoing, always smiling and easily striking up conversations with everyone she met. "Good morning, Ryota. What are you working on today?" the merchant's daughter asked, her curiosity piqued. Ryota, feeling a bit nervous, replied, "I'm making a chair today." She admired his work, her eyes lighting up as she looked around the workshop. "Your furniture is really wonderful," she said, inspecting the pieces on display. She kept talking, one topic after another, and Ryota found himself overwhelmed by her energy. He couldn't get a word in edgewise, only managing to listen. He couldn't seem to talk about himself and just nodded along. At one point, however, she glanced at the back of Ryota's head and casually remarked, "Your hair seems to be thinning a bit, doesn't it?" It was an offhand comment for her, but for Ryota, it struck deeply. She had unknowingly pointed out the very thing he had been worrying about for so long, leaving him feeling wounded. After that, he couldn't figure out what to say, and the conversation grew awkward. The merchant's daughter kept chatting away, oblivious to Ryota's discomfort, but his heart had already begun to close. That night, Ryota stood in front of the mirror, staring at the back of his head. "Maybe I'm just not cut out to be with anyone," he sighed, feeling his confidence slip away. Sometime later, Ryota met another new person. This time, it was a traveling woman who happened to stop by the village. She was quiet and had a calm demeanor, and Ryota felt a sense of peace in her presence. "Hello, are you traveling?" Ryota asked gently. She smiled softly and replied, "Yes, I'm passing through the mountains on my way to the next village." For a while, they walked together along the village path, chatting casually. Ryota enjoyed hearing her stories about the places she'd visited and the people she'd met, and he found himself opening up a bit, talking more freely than before. However, the woman soon noticed Ryota's lack of confidence. Whenever he spoke, there was a hesitation in his voice, as if he was always worried about how he was being perceived. She could sense that Ryota wasn't fully comfortable with himself, and this made her feel a bit burdened. Though the woman was kind, she gradually felt a growing distance between them. She had met many people on her travels, and while she understood Ryota's insecurities, she realized that it would be difficult to continue spending time with him. "Ryota, you're a wonderful person, but I must continue my journey," she said, gently bidding him farewell. While Ryota understood her words, he couldn't help but feel a deep sadness. His insecurities had once again caused him to lose another connection. Another day, Ryota met a new woman at the village market. She was selling vegetables, and as they shopped together, their conversation flowed naturally. She was down to earth and approachable, and Ryota found himself gradually opening up to her. However, as their conversation progressed, Ryota began talking about his usual topic, saving money. "It's important not to waste money," he said earnestly. But as he spoke, he noticed a slight change in her expression. While Ryota was genuinely passionate about being frugal, she started to see him as stingy. "Money is important, but it's also important to use it to enjoy life," she replied kindly. Ryota, however, doubled down on his stance, saying, "But by saving, we can secure our future." The conversation became awkward after that. Once again, Ryota felt that his overly cautious attitude about money had strained another relationship. With each new encounter, Ryota realized that he was being forced to confront his inner struggles. His thinning hair, his lack of confidence, his tendency to speak without thinking, and his cautious approach to money, all these things made him feel as though he were sabotaging his own chances at building a connection. What Ryota didn't yet know was that these encounters were trials, meant to help him grow. The guardian of matching had arranged these meetings not to punish him, but to guide him toward his perfect match. But for Ryota to find that person, he had to gradually change the way he viewed himself and others. Meeting Arisa. After several disappointing encounters that left Ryota feeling defeated, fate finally brought him to his destined match. One day, after finishing his work, Ryota took his usual walk along the mountain path to clear his mind. As he strolled through the woods, the cool breeze blew through the trees, calming his thoughts. Suddenly, up ahead, he saw a young woman kneeling by the side of the path, carefully picking something. As Ryota approached, he realized she was gathering medicinal herbs. He felt an urge to speak to her, so he walked closer. "Hello, what are you doing?" Ryota asked gently. The woman, startled at first, soon smiled warmly. "Hello, I'm gathering herbs. My father is the village herbalist, and I help him with his work," she explained. Her name was Arisa. Modest and calm, she was well known in the village for her gentle nature and her knowledge of herbs. Ryota was immediately drawn to her peaceful demeanor and kind attitude, and their conversation began to flow easily. "What do you use the herbs for?" Ryota asked, genuinely curious. Though shy at first, Arisa explained the various medicinal properties of the plants she was collecting. Ryota was captivated by her serious, yet kind approach, and listened intently. As they talked, Ryota began to feel a sense of connection. Despite their different lives, he found common ground between Arisa's dedication to her work and his own devotion to his craft. He admired her for her attention to detail and her care for the villagers, much like how he took pride in his carpentry. That day marked the beginning of many more encounters between Ryota and Arisa. They saw each other more often, sometimes walking together along the mountain paths or chatting in the village square. Slowly, they began to share more about themselves and their lives. Ryota found himself increasingly drawn to Arisa's quiet kindness, while Arisa, too, started to feel comfortable opening up to Ryota. A growing rift. As Ryota and Arisa grew closer, they also began to notice subtle differences between them, small things that initially seemed insignificant but gradually became harder to ignore. Whenever Ryota visited Arisa's home, he couldn't help but notice how cluttered it was with herbs, tools, and various items. Ryota, who meticulously organized his workshop, found it difficult to understand why Arisa didn't keep her home tidier. Why doesn't she clean up more? He wondered to himself, though he hesitated to mention it, fearing it might hurt her feelings. On the other hand, Arisa started to notice Ryota's lack of self-confidence. When they spoke, she could sense how cautious he was with his words, always second-guessing himself and worrying about how she might react. Arisa found herself thinking, is Ryota really enjoying our time together, or is he too focused on what I think? One of the things that concerned Arisa most was Ryota's preoccupation with his appearance, particularly his thinning hair. One day, when Ryota confided in her, saying, "I've been feeling insecure about my hair thinning," Arisa didn't know how to respond. She cared deeply for Ryota's kind heart and sincere nature, but she felt unsure of how to reassure him. As they spent more time together, both Ryota and Arisa carried small insecurities in their hearts. But instead of discussing them openly, they kept their concerns to themselves, not wanting to upset the other. The rift between them grew as time passed. Ryota was torn between wanting to express his feelings about the clutter in Arisa's home and not wanting to come across as critical. Meanwhile, Arisa felt unsure about how to encourage Ryota to be more confident in himself, worrying that any comment she made might be taken the wrong way. Despite their deepening affection for each other, these unspoken concerns began to create a gap in their relationship. 5 things that bother each other. One day, Ryota decided it was time to be honest with Arisa. He gathered his courage and gently brought up what had been on his mind. "Arisa, I enjoy spending time with you a lot, but there are a few things I've been thinking about. For example, you sometimes leave food unfinished, and it makes me wonder why. I also notice that you don't tidy up much. I know you're busy, but wouldn't it be easier if things were more organized?" Arisa was taken aback but urged him to continue. Ryota went on, "And sometimes, you tell little white lies. Like when you say you've tidied up, but things haven't really been put away. I just don't understand why." Arisa listened quietly, feeling the weight of his words. Ryota hesitated but continued, "There's also the way you compare me to others sometimes. When you say, that person wakes up earlier, it stings a little. And when you wake up late, I just wish we could spend more time together." Ryota finished speaking, unsure how Arisa would react. He had said everything he needed to, but he was anxious about how she would take it. After a moment of silence, Arisa spoke calmly. "Ryota, I've noticed a few things about you as well. For one, you worry way too much about your thinning hair. From my perspective, it's not something you should be concerned about, but when I see how much it bothers you, it makes me worry, too." Ryota was surprised but listened intently. "I've also noticed that you sometimes seem hesitant to speak your mind. You're such a kind and talented person, Ryota, but it's hard for me to understand why you're always second-guessing yourself. I just want you to be more confident." She continued, "You also say things sometimes that don't need to be said, and I wonder if you regret them afterward. I know it comes from a good place, but I think we could communicate better." Ryota was learning more about how Arisa saw him, and he realized she had been thinking about these things for some time. And then, there's the fact that you can be a bit stubborn. When you've made up your mind about something, it's hard to change. While it shows your strength, it can also be a bit difficult for me at times." Arisa paused before finishing, and, "Ryota, you're a little too frugal. I know it's important to save money, but sometimes, I think it's okay to spend a little more freely, too." After expressing everything, both Ryota and Arisa felt relieved. They had finally shared what had been on their minds, and with that openness came a new understanding. Accepting each other's hearts. Having spoken honestly with each other, Ryota and Arisa realized that while their concerns hadn't disappeared, they had taken a significant step toward understanding one another. They recognized that their differences wouldn't change overnight, but by acknowledging and accepting them, they could move forward. Ryota no longer expected Arisa to change her habit of leaving things untidy. He understood that her lifestyle was part of who she was, and he didn't need to force her to be different. "Arisa, I understand now that tidiness isn't a big priority for you, and that's okay. You work hard, and I don't want you to feel like you have to change," he said gently. Arisa smiled in relief. "Thank you, Ryota. I'll try to be more organized, but just knowing that you accept me as I am makes things feel so much easier." Ryota, too, felt grateful that Arisa had accepted him. She had always supported him, even when he lacked confidence. Arisa reassured him, saying, "Ryota, I've always valued your kindness and sincerity. Your appearance isn't something that matters to me, so please don't worry about it anymore." Her words warmed Ryota's heart. "If you feel that way, I think I can finally start believing in myself." "Thank you, Arisa." Instead of trying to change each other, Ryota and Arisa realized that they could help each other grow by offering support. Ryota decided that whenever Arisa was too busy to tidy up, he would lend a hand. Meanwhile, Arisa made a conscious effort to encourage Ryota, reminding him of his strengths and helping him build his confidence. "We really do complete each other, don't we?" Ryota said with a smile. Arisa nodded, smiling back. "Yes, we do. We can help each other grow and face whatever challenges come our way." The beginning of a new journey. With newfound understanding and acceptance, Ryota and Arisa began a new chapter in their lives together. They had faced their differences and come to terms with them, creating a deeper bond that brought them even closer. One day, Ryota and Arisa returned to the shrine where they had first encountered the guardian of matching. Surrounded by the lush greenery, they clasped their hands together in gratitude. "Ryota, I believe that we are walking this path together thanks to the guardian of matching," Arisa said, smiling. Ryota nodded in agreement. "Yes, the guardian has been watching over us, helping us understand each other." As they stood there, a gentle breeze rustled the trees, as if the guardian was acknowledging their gratitude. Suddenly, a soft light enveloped them, and they heard the voice of the guardian. "You two have done well. You've understood each other's hearts and accepted your differences. That is what it means to build a true bond. It's not easy to accept everything, but only by experiencing it can you learn what can be accepted." Ryota and Arisa were deeply moved by the guardian's words. The guardian had known from the beginning that they had the potential to walk this path, to understand and accept each other. Even the moments of misunderstanding had strengthened their bond. Continue to cherish each other and walk together. "A new journey awaits you both," the guardian said kindly. Ryota and Arisa squeezed each other's hands, bowing deeply in thanks to the guardian. A short time later, they returned to the village, ready to face the new days ahead. Ryota took on his work with renewed confidence, and his craftsmanship improved even further. His gratitude for Arisa's support showed in every piece he created. Arisa, too, continued her work as a herbalist, feeling more fulfilled than ever as she helped the villagers. Her days were brighter now that she had Ryota by her side, and their lives grew richer and warmer as they shared their journey together. And so, with hearts full of love and understanding, Ryota and Arisa embarked on the next phase of their journey. They knew that, no matter what challenges lay ahead, they would face them together, hand in hand. "Let's keep experiencing everything together," Ryota said to Arisa. Smiling, Arisa nodded. "Yes, whatever happens, we'll overcome it together." And so, the new journey of Ryota and Arisa began, as they took each step forward into the future, side by side.